Good day. Today we are doing paper 2 of May-June 2022, which is, we will tackle question number 1, which is, it consists of statistics. Question 1 and question 2 are statistics, but the first question is statistics. So let's get right to it without wasting any time. So in question 1, you are given a table. So it says, the table below shows the mass in kg of the school bags of 80 learners. So the table has two columns, which is the mass column and also the frequency column, which is the frequency table. So now they say on the first question, which is 1.1. So in 1.1, they say write down the modal class of the data given on the frequency table. So on the other side you have mass, on the other side you have frequency, as you can see from the sketch or from the diagram. So the modal class of the data would be the one that has the highest frequency on the data that is given. So on the intervals, on the mass side, and also you check on the frequency side, the one that has the highest frequency is the one that is called your modal class. So your modal class would be the one that has a frequency of 21, because the highest number there is 21. So the modal class that they're looking for would be the interval of 9 or between 9 and 11. So that will be your first answer for 1.1, which should be pretty easy. So you just look at your diagram. And then in 1.2, so 1.2 says complete the cumulative frequency column in the table in the answer book. So we don't have an answer book, so I'll just sketch a column on here on the pad, and then we will do the cumulative frequency. So to get the cumulative frequency, I'm just gonna, let me do a simple sketch. So I'm gonna have the original frequency. Then how many do we have? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Let me just confirm. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Yeah. So it's gonna be 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Then that will be 7. So the first digit is 6. The second one is 18. The third being 21, the fourth being 19, and then 11, then 4 and 1. So to get the cumulative frequency, and it's just 2 marks, it's just you adding. So you add diagonally, and then you enter your answer horizontally. So the first one, it will just be 6. So I'm going to use my calculator. Then when you add, you're going to add diagonally, then you put your answer horizontally. That's what you do to complete a cumulative frequency row or table. So we will add 18 plus a 6. Then here we're going to have 24. And then we're going to add again 21 with a 24. Then we're going to get a 45. Then we're going to add a 19 to that 45. Then we get 64. And then we're going to add the 11 to that 64. Then we get a 75. And then we're going to add a 4 to that 75, which will be a 79. Then we're going to add 1 to that 79. Then we get 80. And one other thing that you need to be careful of is that the last value of your frequency table has to be equal to the number of the data that is given. They said that we have 80 learners, and then the last number is also 80. So that means your cumulative frequency, would be correct. So let's go to 1.3, which says draw the cumulative frequency, or the ogive, or the ogive, whichever way you want to call it. So that is 3 marks. We don't have an answer book, but I will simply do a sketch. So remember that when we use, or when we draw an ogive, we use the cumulative frequency column as well as the interval, which is your mass. So I will not draw it into scale, just for calculating purposes. So here's my graph, and then on the x-axis I will have my mass, and then on the y-axis I will have my frequency there. So I'm just gonna plot it randomly, but I will not draw it to scale, but you can use your answer book that will be provided by the examiner when you want to achieve this. So I'm just gonna say 6, 24, and then I'm gonna have 45, and then I'm gonna have 64, 75, 79, and okay, just there, and then we're gonna have 80 there, and then we're gonna have just below 45, we're gonna have 40. So, and then on the mass side, for the mass, the intervals, you're gonna take the intervals that are on the right hand side, you're gonna leave the ones that are on the left hand side. So you're gonna start with a 7, then a 9, and then a 11, and then it's 13. After 13 it's 15, it's 15, then it's 17. After that, the last digit would be 19. So on the data sheet, not on the data sheet, but on the graph paper, they would have already said this is cumulative frequency, and then this is mass, and then they will say those are your y-axis, and these will be your x-axis. So to plot, we must plot an S-shaped graph. So let's try to do that. Yeah, I'm gonna put a 5 there because our graph has to begin to 0. So we're gonna accommodate these values together with the mass. So we're gonna plot the cumulative frequency against mass. So let's do that. So the first point, it would be where it's 7, it's going to be a 6, so it's going to be right there. And then yeah, your graph must start to 0. Where it says 9, it must be a 24, so 9 will go against 24. Yeah, I hope this sketch becomes an S shape, because I'll be in trouble if it's not an S shape. And then 11, you're gonna plot 11 against 45. So 11, we're gonna plot it against 45. And then 13, it must be with 64. And then 15, it must be with 75, I believe. So 15 against 75. And then 17, it must be against 79. And then 19 will be against 80, which is the last value. Then we must start at 5 and 0. So I'm gonna plot my ogive. Yeah, it's not into scale, but yeah, it's the least I can do. But it must be an S shape. So if I had a graph paper, then I would make the graph look more appealing. So that would be your OGIV, which is 3 marks. So that is 1.3. Now we move on to 1.4. So in 1.4, they say use the graph to determine the median of this data. So to get the median, you must use your OGIV, right? So you must plot your OGIV. Sorry, we already plot our OGIV, but we must use our OGIV to get the median of this data. So how do you get the median of this data? So what you do, you go to your OGIV, then you check where you can get your median. So if you go to the graph where it says 40, right? Because if you remember, our data is up until 80, so our median has to be where it says 40. So you're gonna draw a line, from 40 and then up until you touch your OGIV, right? Up until you get in contact with your OGIV, then you go down. So you can see that our median, we find it between 9 and 11, and then the correct answer there would be so I'm going to say a median, or our median would be 10.5 or slightly 10.6, because since this is mass, so it's going to be 10.5 or 10.6 kg. So that would be your correct answer, since it's not drawn into scale, but on your graph paper you're going to get the exact answer of that. So in 1.5, here in question 1, so it says the international guideline for the mass of a school bag is that it should not exceed 10% of the learner's mass. So yeah, they've given us a rule or some sort of guideline that it should not exceed 10%. So, and then in 1.51, it says calculate the estimated mass, calculate the estimated mean mass of the school bags. So what do you do when you calculate the mean mass? So when you calculate the mean mass, so you're gonna give the symbol for the mean mass. It's gonna be quite a long calculation, but I'm gonna simplify it for you guys. So I'm just gonna draw a line. We know that we're gonna divide by the 80. So on our numerator, then this is what we're gonna do. So on our numerator, this is what we do. We're gonna multiply. So where it says mass, which is if we check the first interval, it's between 5 and 7. The middle point, or the midpoint of 5 and 7, is going to be a 6. So we're gonna say 6 times a 6. So if we say 6 times a 6, then add that. Then when you go to the second one, where it says between 7 and 9, you have 18. You know that the midpoint of 7 and 9 is 8. So you're going to say 18 times 8 plus. So you're going to do that continuously. And then on the third one, it's between 9 and 11. We know that the midpoint there is 10. So we're going to say 10 times a 21. And then we add that. The midpoint of 11 and 13 now is going to be 12. So it's going to be 12 times a 19. So 12 times 19 plus, and then the midpoint of 13 and 15 is 14. So it's going to be 14 times 11. So here we're using the frequency table and the mass table. Then plus the midpoint of 15 and 17. This time around it is going to be 16. So it's 16 times a 4 class, and the last one is going to be the midpoint of 17 and 19, so it's going to be 18, so it's going to be 18 times 1, all that into close brackets divided by 80, because you're looking for the min mass. If you quickly punch in that in your calculator, you get your answer. Your min mass will be a 10.68 kgs. So that would be your min mass. And then now we look at 1.52. So it says the min mass of this group of learners was found to be 80 kgs. So on the average, on average, are these school bags satisfying the international guideline with regarding to mass? Motivate your answer for 2 marks. So you go back to the statement of 1.5. So the statement of 1.5 said that the international guideline for the mass of the school bag is that it should not exceed 10% of learners' body mass, right? So how do we do that? So we're going to calculate that 10%, then we check if does it satisfy the guidelines. So what we do here, we're going to say 10% of 80 kgs. So we know that it's 80 kgs. So 10% of 80 kgs, we know that is going to be equals to an 80 kg. So that is the international guideline. But the mass that we got on the previous question, which is the min mass, it was 10.68. So 10.68 kg is greater than the 8 kg. So coming back to the question, it says the min mass of this group of learners was found to be 80 kgs on average. Are these school bags satisfying the international guideline with regards to mass? Motivate your answer. So since we got 10.68 kgs, and then now we saw that 10% of 80 kgs is 8 kgs, so that we find that 10.68 kgs is greater than 8 kgs. So therefore that means that to motivate your answer, then that the learners bags or school bags are much heavier than the guidelines, are much heavier than the required guidelines. So that is how you would motivate your answer. So yeah, that question 1 is worth 12 marks, so it's only from 1.1 till 1.5, and that is the end of question 1.